Now let's now quickly jump into the analysis of what you've heard. And by the way, you've heard about the NBS and what Nigeria, what it's saying about the unemployment rate. But joining me now to speak about these is Professor Abiodun Adeniyi. He's the Deputy Dean of the Postgraduate School at Bayes University here in Abuja. Good to see you and thanks for your time.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Quite an insightful moment with Dr. Ohai on BRICS. Let's quickly talk about that. Since 2015, Nigeria applied. Until this moment, it looks like we're still dilly-dallying to becoming a full member of BRICS.
Well, it was quite shocking that we're not on the list of those invited. But I think that if it doesn't come now, it will definitely come later, because there's no way they can continue to ignore the largest economy in Africa, the most populous black nation on planet Earth, and one with the biggest potential, the biggest promise, and of course with so much signs that growth, will continue at some point. There might be some reasons, not too far from politics, that is probably making them to take decisions. Do not forget that politics manifests at the international level oftentimes, but it might be masked in different guises. But over time, it will get exposed, and maybe we'll continue at the level of diplomacy, at the level of lobbying, and we'll get admitted, because it's not a bloc that we can actually ignore, considering the narrative they are trying to change, the dominance of the Western power in global economic configuration. They're changing that narrative, and it's important that we belong to it, especially with the moribund nature of the non-alignment, as the case could be. So it's a matter of time. I think we do not have any option now but just to keep calm. We cannot afford to be aggressive or confrontational, but just to continue the lobbying, diplomacy, and at some point they will consider us.
As we do that, speaking of which, the big news also in Nigeria has to do with the NBS, Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, and many people are still talking about that dramatic drop in unemployment in the country.
It's not a dramatic drop, really, and that's why people need to understand it very carefully. People need to read the report, digest it properly, and appreciate what I think the agency has done. What the agency has done is simply to change the methodology for computing the unemployment and underemployment figures in the country, compliant with ILO recommendation, compliant with World Bank recommendation, and in sync with what other African countries have done, 26 African countries. What they have done is to expand the range of those that will classify as unemployed. Before, it used to be, if you're unemployed, which means that if you're unemployed, it means that you don't have opportunity to work for even 1 hour, in a day, or 1 hour in a week or so. So they've changed that now. If you work 1 hour, you are classified as employed. Subsistence farmers are now included. Then, of course, they've removed the upper limit. Before, if you are 64, and whether you're working or not, you are not in that bracket of those who are considered as employed. But now that upper cap has been removed. So before, it used to be between, if you are between ages 20 or so and 64, but now it's between ages 15 and 64 and above, It's been made to include consultants, retired people who do one kind of job or the other, and probably work for 1 hour and earn a lot of money. Those days, before now, those ones were out of their bracket. But so much methodology has gone into it, new methodology compliant with changing realities, and it has expanded the range of those that are usually classified as employed. So it's not necessarily saying that the thing has dropped or that government has done one thing or the other to bring down the rate of unemployment. What we're seeing now is just the culture of the
using the international standard to measure
international standard, as outlined by ILO, World Bank. And of course, people might find it very difficult to believe, further to the fact that there's a huge trust deficit between government and the people. But all we need to do is just to be patient, to read the report. I read it, I was one of those invited as from the academics to listen to it. And I appreciated it because it's research work, and of course, there's no research that you are doing. It's your methodology that will determine the outcome at the end of the day. Just there's a change in methodology, compliant with international best practices. Not necessarily saying that the reality on ground has changed, but here we're changing our methodologies such that government will have a better view of the situation because everybody cannot be said to be unemployed, as the case could be. Because if you go by the old rate and you want to calculate those who are unemployed, you may be getting like 80% or 70% or 60%. But no nation, even before now when it was 3%, if you look at African countries, no African country or even countries outside Africa had a high number of unemployment rate, even though their situation is not too different from our own case. So they have changed the methodology and it has reflected 4.1, other than the 33% that we've been talking about. And of course, if you appreciate the inclusion of subsistence farmers, the inclusion of people above 64, the inclusion of people from age 15, of course you appreciate what the agency is saying.
Well, I'm happy that this is getting some clarity. Let's recap. Nigeria is now rebasing the unemployment data, so to speak, and using the international data. Nigeria now has defaulted to the international standard measurement. Working age is now 15 years and above instead of 15 to 64 years in the old methodology. In understanding this, one other key thing here quickly is the NBS going all out to ensure that other economists and statisticians, that's a word.
Statistician, you're right.
I stutter on that all the time. Get this new international method. Let's close on this. How much of good is this doing us as a people now that we seem to be getting the actual figure right?
I think there are two things really, but the first thing we need to also include is that before now you say we have quite a number of people that we easily say are workers. They are not unemployed, they are employed. But these people, you find out that they cannot necessarily make ends meet. They still struggle. And of course, sometimes you'll be wondering, are you not working? But these people become or are necessarily resort to some level of begging, because they cannot pay house rent, they cannot pay their bills, as much as you can imagine. And of course, these are sets of people that MBS often regard as the working in work poverty, or that Nigerian Labour Congress regard as working poor. But the new methodology for calculating unemployment rate envisages or captures this level of people, and then the figures are also out in the report, which I consider very, very interesting. So the new methodology, and the second aspect of it, directly to your question, is to say that government cannot begin to take a more holistic view at the picture, not necessarily thinking that if we say 33% of Nigerians are unemployed, then of course the other percentage are fine, or the other percentage, or the other percentage that are supposedly working, are satisfied or are able to take care of their bills, are not in need, are not in want, are not necessarily begging, or are contributing to the GDP. Quite a number of people working, are not adding value to the system, as the case could be. But the new methodology is able to draw attention to these, so that rather than quantity, we'll probably be thinking about quality as well.
And I'm hoping that we'll stay on this. I'd like to thank you for your time, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi. And you can catch up with more on that on our website, arise.tv. That's it on Arise Primetime tonight. I'm Sulaiman Alede. Thank you for watching.